Internet! You're watching Kiriosity, the vlog where we get nerdy on geek culture. My name is Kiri Callaghan, and I just realized I look like I'm cosplaying Han Solo.
We look good.
The weird thing about Valentine's Day is it's one of those holidays where we're really not sure how it got started as its current incarnation today. It's a little bit wibbly. Now, I love a good mystery, so I thought today it would be fun if we took a look at the darker side of Valentine's Day's history. But before we get started, let me set the mood.
Seattle, the sleepless city that inexplicably closes everything at 7 p.m., full of mystery, rain, and jaywalkers. Who am I? I'm just a curious cat, trying to make sense of it all. Her name was Venus, Lady Love. She had a new man in her life and she was scared, a fellow by the name of Valentine. They'd been introduced by a mutual friend, Geoffrey Chaucer. Not a bad guy, but maybe a little too in love with love, if you know what I mean. Venus said she trusted him, but she was no stranger to heartbreak. She said she just needed a friend, someone to check out Valentine's story. I warned her that the truth wasn't always pretty. She said she just needed to know. So I took the case. I started at one of my favorite haunts for information, the public library. If this Valentine character was the saint that Venus said he claimed to be, I'd be able to find some confirmation there. What I found was more questions. Records told of anywhere between 1 to 3 St. Valentines, all of whom suffered from torture or martyrdom on February 14th. Hardly the courtly love story Chaucer had talked about. There was rumor and legend regarding him performing weddings for soldiers forbidden to marry, but while it was a popular story, nothing appeared to be definitive. The more I looked, the more Valentine's association with romantic love seemed to be Chaucer's embellishment. By the end, I'd found 11 saints by the name of Valentine, most not even associated with a famed day, and none of them the man Venus thought she knew. I couldn't shake that feeling that there was more to find, that day, February 14th, had even more than religious martyrdom staining its name. Sometimes I hate being right. Chicago, 1929. The height of the Prohibition era. A time when bootlegging thrived and became a central point for mobster conflict, and thus set up the most infamous gangland slaying in the United States. Bugs Moran's North Side Irish gang was in constant war with Al Capone's South Side Italian gang, battling for power. The rivalry was long going, and Moran wasn't even subtle with the press with his distaste for Capone. He mockingly called him the Beast and a lowlife. After Moran had stolen the Southside shipments, it seemed Capone had reached the end of his tolerance for his rival's existence. On the morning of February 14th, Capone sent Moran a Valentine he'd never forget. Moran's men were often found out in a garage off of North Clark Street, and there the trap was set. Two of Capone's lookouts, Harry and Phil Keywell, mistook one of Moran's men for Moran himself and notified their colleagues to move in. Sleeping in late was the only thing that saved Moran's life. 4 or 5 gunmen, depending on which report you looked at, arrived in a stolen police car. 2 gunmen wore police uniforms, and when Moran's men caught sight of them, they were fooled into thinking this was just another police raid. They surrendered their weapons and peacefully lined up, facing the wall. Their cooperation was repaid with 2 Tommy guns, a sawed-off shotgun, and a .45 being emptied into them, mostly embedded in the head and torso. It was a fast and bloody execution. The guns alerted the neighbors, but as Capone's hired men exited, those dressed as cops pretended to escort the 2 plainclothes gangsters back to the car, cleverly soothing immediate fears of onlookers. Because of this, even after the massacre was discovered, many continued to believe weeks later that the police were responsible. One of the victims, Frank Gusenberg, despite the many bullets in his body, was still alive when the real police arrived on the scene. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, where he eventually died. Even though it could have meant justice on those who had attacked him and his colleagues, he never gave testimony on the gunmen. The police returned to the scene of the crime to attempt to piece together the murder themselves. This would be one of the first major investigations where the science of ballistics came into play. The police never had enough evidence to convict Capone, but it did bring him to federal attention and the eventual arrest for lesser crimes. Interestingly enough, 7 years after the massacre, on February 15th, Jack McGurn, the man believed to have helped Capone orchestrate the Valentine's Day massacre, was assassinated by 3 men with machine guns in a bowling alley. A comic Valentine's Day card was left for him at the reception desk. It read, "You lost your dough and handsome houses, but things could be worse, you know. At least you haven't lost your trousers." The culprits of the murder were never found, but this racked up yet another tale of blood around this so-called Saint Valentine. I had to tell Venus what I'd found out, so I went to her place myself. The truth may not be pretty, but it's my job to find it. What people do with that information? That's all up to them.
We may never know the reason Valentine's Day is the way it is. I really missed color. So, while we may never know exactly why Valentine's Day is the way we know it is today, it's got a pretty interesting history to it. Even though some of that history may not be directly related to what it is. It is bizarrely linked to a lot of blood and gore. An epic thank you to my beautiful friend Kristina Horner. You can check out her amazing channel. And speaking of my beautiful and fantastic friends, have you seen Nika Harper's story mode? Because it's amazing. When I'm not hamming it up over here, you can find me on my personal channel. Please like and subscribe to this video. It would mean a lot to us. And most importantly, internet, stay curious.